Alright guys, we are back out here with another video. We're out here trolling again tonight. We actually got a fish on right now. We've already caught a few, and we do a ton of information on this channel, as you guys know. And you know, a lot of our stuff's real specific, the time of year, this kind of bite, this kind of presentation, that kind of stuff. Tonight we're going to talk about trolling basics. Basically, if you're new to walleye fishing, if you've been walleye fishing and not a troller, I absolutely love trolling. I do a ton of it really all year long. It's obviously spring right now, but all year long we do a lot of walleye trolling. So we're going to talk about a lot of the basics, rods, line, different kind of baits, different kind of speeds, planer boards, all that kind of good stuff. So stay tuned. We're going to catch a whole bunch of walleyes down here in Green Bay and showcase a lot of information about trolling, really relevant to the whole season. Stay tuned.
Fish on.
Second one of the night. Absolutely smashed that thing. It looks impressive. Clear this inside.
Oh yeah, nice fish. Nice specimen.
On the road. Coming. There we go. Not a giant, but a long one to start. It's only 27, I'll bet. Yep, full spawner. Oh, look at that, Tyler. We got another one on. Right in the back here. I'll give you this one. I'll go to the camera. There we go. Beauty. Kind of a banged up post spawner, but probably 27. Got the orange scatter wrap. Get a lot of questions on what kind of colors we have setting out here. Anytime we're fishing this real dirty water, I love oranges, I love green. Here we go. Not a big one here, but a great walleye pretty much anywhere else you're gonna walleye fish. Just barely hooked in the nose. There we go. We'll let him go. Alright, we're hooked up on another one. I don't think this one's super big, but it's not even dark out yet and we're getting them, so that's a good sign. This one is on a Smithwick Elite 8, like an olive green. Little guy there. Up top. Fish on. Not quite dark yet. This one came on a Wonder Bread Perfect 10. Got some weight to it. Another fish, left side. Yep, doubled up. That one's not as big, I don't think. We're gonna net this one first. This one seems heavy. This is when it gets fun. We got a lot of stuff going back. Not a giant here, but a nice one. That one. Pretty solid fish. Beauty. What a 25-inch chunker. Take those. Pretty good average size so far.
That's a nice fish.
That is a nice fish. Look at that one. Alright, so we get a ton of questions basically asking about planer boards. And basically all a planer board is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a vise that takes your bait off to the side. this does really nothing as far as, you know, how your bait is gonna move in the water or anything like that. The one thing I do like about it is if you do kind of have big waves or stuff like that, it does add a little bit of a rock, but that's about it. So yeah, there's left ones and there's right ones. We're gonna clip a left one on here. Now the ones I use are called Opti-Tackle planer boards. This is kind of like their standard walleye size. The other one I would recommend is an offshore tackle board. I really like those two. They have a good tattletale. Basically the way every planer board works, there's some kind of clip in the middle or in the front, and there's some kind of clip in the back. And basically what I like to do, every clip's a little bit different, but I run them through there and then I double them back like that. So it's kind of wrapped around there and locked in place. The next thing I do is I slack it up and I put it through the back clip. Now the only modification I've made to my boards is obviously the lights. Put some reflective tape on there. Then that back clip, I run an offshore tackle clip so that line cannot escape that. It's got a little pin system in here, so when it's in, it is locked in place. And basically what that amount of slack does is it gives you that tattletale feature. So if you're running like crawler harnesses real slow, that fish kind of normally, you see it start to go like that and then start dropping back. Or obviously if we have a fish that just smokes it, you're gonna see that flag drop, the board's gonna move back to alert us we have a fish on. So as far as running planer boards, there's a couple different ways you can do it when you're letting them out, but basically we're gonna run this one, our third board out. So all I'm gonna do is drop this back. I got 3 other lines out on my left right now. I'm gonna sneak this one in. So I'm gonna drop it back till it's about even with the third spot out here. Then I'm gonna lock it in place. A lot of guys ask how many feet do you let out after that? That has nothing to do with it. I just kind of space them out evenly throughout. The amount of line you have from the planer board to your lure is obviously what dictates depth. So we're gonna send this one back out in the spot and cinch it up, throw it in our third rod holder up, and we are back to fishing. Hooked up on another one. They are starting to bite. Just actually had a big entanglement. 3 fish I think we caught within a couple minutes of each other.
The orange again.
This one's on orange scatter rat. I really like running that bait in shallow water. A lot of those shallow water fish are more spooky, and that bait makes no noise and has more of a triggering quality with that side to side action. No, he's on. Got him?
Got him.
Got the camera tighter? We got a bait stuck to the mic of the camera. For some reason I didn't think this fish was big. Look at that.
Another nice eye.
Another about 26, 27. That's 27 all day.
Yep.
And we have another fish on as we speak here. It is on. We kind of dial the whole presentation in like this: bait, depth, speed. It's kind of how it should be if you're around enough fish. Look at this, tripled up. You got another one right there.
Taylor, get this one. There we
Two
go.
on both here. One looks big. Alright, we got the net back. Not gonna net that one though.
Then he got in that other one. Probably about 23.
Yeah. Anywhere else a great walleye. Here a smaller than average walleye. I'll let him go. Alright, so one thing that's super important to talk about is your boat control, speed, and stuff like that. That changes quite a bit throughout the season and depending on what you guys are trolling. So in the spring like this, it's almost all stick baits for me. I'm trolling a lot of suspended stick baits, generally in very shallow water. And the speeds I like to run is a lot of like when the water's real cold in the upper 30s, I like to run a lot of like 0.7, 0.8, just barely getting those baits moving real slow. And that's when a lot of like your suspending cranks like Husky Jerk, Smithwick rope, stuff like that, it just has that real slow wobble. And a suspending bait, especially so once you get it down there, it stays down there and it doesn't have to take a lot of speed to get the bait down there. So we're trolling real slow in the spring. In the summer when I'm trolling cranks, I bump it up quite a bit and I'm doing a lot of like 1.6 to 2.2. Especially in the heat of that summer, that speed can be a big time trigger. Now, if I'm trolling like spinner rigs too or live bait presentations, I run a lot of like 1.2. So you kind of switch it up quite a bit depending on what you're trolling and the time of year. Now, boat control wise, what I like to do, if I'm trolling a lot of cranks, I'm using my kicker and I'm kind of, you know, dictating the speed that way. I have a 9.9 Suzuki kicker that's awesome for trolling, but I'm always using my trolling motor when I am trolling. A lot of times I'll just put my kicker in gear, and what I'll do is I'll use my directions with my iPilot remote. So I don't really preset a lot of tracks. I kind of just work the spots how I want to work them with the remote, and that's kind of how I control the boat. Now, if you don't have a kicker, a lot of your new outboards you buy now have an RPM adjuster on the side, so you can put it in gear and kind of dial it down to get in the sweet spot, or to hit that sweet spot you can just use the trolling motor a lot of times. So kind of the ideal setup that I run the most is I run my kicker, I keep it in gear, and then I use the trolling motor to dictate my exact speed and my direction. So pretty simple, and that's just how I kind of use my boat control to catch more fish trolling. Alright, so we talked about this a little bit in a previous video, but your rods when you're trolling and your reels are super important. You've got to be using line counters so you can replicate that depth. Pretty much every lure, every type of bottom bouncer, whether you're running 1 ounce this or 1 ounce snap weights or 2.5 ounce bottom bouncers, or if you're running a lot of the popular brands of crankbaits, they're all going to have dive curves. So it'll tell you exactly how many feet you need to let out to get down to those fish, right? So that's super important. You need a line counter. For almost all my trolling application stuff, I run mono, and I like that extra stretch. There's very few times I actually troll with braid, and I like that stretch. I like when a fish hits that it keeps that fish pinned, and it's a lot like working a jerkbait for bass. You want to use something that has some sponge in it, whether that's the rod or your line, to keep that fish pinned, because it's super easy for fish to pull treble hooks out of them. Now the rods, super spongy rods, and the way I kind of run it, especially if I'm stacking lines like I am now, how we're running 4 lines aside, I like my longest rods as my outside boards. It gives that rod, or gives that planer board a lot of leverage. You can get that board out a lot farther. And as I kind of work down to my back rod, my closest to me rod, I go with 7 footers or 6.5 footers. So, you know, you kind of want those rods, especially if then they're outside about like that. And then you go on my second rod about like that, third rod like that, and my fourth rod's almost parallel to the water like that. And that'll give you guys a lot of help as far as if you're trying to stack lines like we are, whether you're running 4 lines, 6 lines, or 8 lines like we are right now. So super effective way to fish. That's what we're doing, and trolling's a great way to fish. I absolutely love doing it, and it obviously catches a ton of walleyes.